Hello, welcome back. You're watching America Talks Live. I'm Bill Tucker. I'm joined now by Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. He is a retired lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy. He is president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, and he is author of the book Battle for the Soul of Islam, An American Muslim's Patriot's Fight to Save His Faith. Dr. Jasser, thanks for being here.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Bill. Thank you.
You know, there are a lot of people who would say that there is a massive, massive conflict between democracy and Islam. In one of the places they would point to outside of, say, a place like Iran is Turkey. And over the weekend, we had Erdogan, in essence, gathering up and consolidating the power that rests within the government, which is an Islamic state government, if you will, and I don't mean ISIS. I just mean an Islamic government, where increasingly Sharia law seems to play an intertwined role with the laws of the state. What's your reaction to the vote that happened in Turkey over the weekend?
Well, I think we need to take Erdogan at his word. Remember, Erdogan runs the AKP, which is the Muslim Brotherhood of the Turkish people, the party of Turkey, which is equivalent to the Muslim Brotherhood. So they not only want an Islamic state, they want Sharia law, and he's slowly been consolidating power over the past few years. We saw the purge of 30,000 professors last summer in the so-called coup. And now he wanted this referendum that he put out because he wanted to be able to cancel the prime minister's position, to end the parliamentary system, to have control over 3 to 5 million civil servants, which he would then likely fire or control from a autocratic perspective. And then also increase the number of judges he hires so that he can take away some of the checks and balances in the system. All of that is a move towards autocracy. And Erdogan himself, as the mayor of Istanbul in 1996, Bill, said that democracy is like a train. You get on it until you get where you want to go, and then you get off. And this is why Islamists can never be trusted to say that, well, they're for elections, they're for democracy. It is always a one-way street. It was that way in the revolution in Iran. It was that way for the Brotherhood in Egypt. It's that way for Jamaat Islamiyya in Pakistan. Wherever you want, they are not. They are authoritarians who believe in a theocracy. So I hope, and the silver lining here is that this may be what pushes the rest of the Turkish community to begin to push back and actually have a Turkish awakening the way the Arab awakening started in 2011.
Well, it doesn't seem likely, because the last time anybody tried a Turkish awakening, there were, as you noted, a purge of the university system. They got rid of that that line of thought very quickly. There was a purge in government civil servants as well. So my question is, like, how did this happen? I mean, how did we reach this point in Turkey? I should point out for folks listening, and I'd love your comment on it, apparently the larger cities like Ankara, Istanbul, Izmir, all voted against giving him more power. So where did this support come from?
That's a great question. The opposition party, much to my agreement, came out yesterday and said they're not even going to accept the results. He won by 1%, 51.3%, and there's a lot of concern of illegitimacy of the elections, and the fact that it may have been a corrupt election. So a lot of this has to be verified, and this is why we are not a democracy or a republic. Majoritocracies are always doomed to failure. 50% plus one can often vote to end the rights of minorities and civil liberties, etc. Not to mention that there was a lot of irregularities in the smaller cities and smaller towns that appear to have shipped in many. The Kurdish community might have been excluded in the voting, so there's just a ton of irregularities. And this is where we need the West to sort of chime in and say, listen, not only is this a large economic powerhouse in the Middle East, but this is a NATO country that we should hold accountable to the rest of the democracies.
I think you beat me to that. I was just going to say, I mean, the reason we're talking about this, in addition to the fact it's Turkey, is they're also a member of NATO, and we have American bases in Turkey. I mean, does America leave? Do we have any options in terms of where we relocate? Or which would be an enormously expensive proposition, but do we have options in that area?
Well, Erdogan, we should start to look at the writing on the wall. He's trying to bring the Ottoman caliphate, if you will. So our options would include starting to tell Turkey that they're not going to operate this way as a autocracy under the rubric of a NATO alliance. And that might mean being willing in some few years to sever that relationship. But when you have President Trump telling the rest of NATO they got to pay their way, so if we're going to be tough on Germany and France and Sweden about paying up what they owe us, we better be tough on Turkey when they start to abandon human rights that are part and parcel of every democracy.
Yeah, no, it is fascinating, and for a long time we've really held Turkey kind of at an arm's distance. The Obama policy was to kind of ignore them, let them do what they will, if you will, and support them as members of NATO. It sounds like there's come a time for a change in our American policy towards Turkey.
And this is so important because I want to remind you of one thing. The Turks have been dumping millions upon millions into the U.S. The largest mosque in the United States just opened up in Maryland a year ago. And the Turkish lobby is extremely influential in the West. So at the end of the day, we need to begin to shift that. The old Obama policy of what he called strategic patience as an approach to Korea, approach to Egypt, Syria, was useless and was appeasement to the nth degree. And we need to shift that to start to hold them accountable to our own interests and also universal human rights.
Well, this raises a kind of delicate issue, and I ask you this as an American Muslim. How do we do this without also, I guess, underscoring the fear that many people have of Islam?
Actually, I think the tougher we are with my Muslim colleagues domestically and abroad, the more tough love we give them and us, the more we hold them accountable to our own standards rather than this bigotry of low expectations, the more I think Islamophobia, whatever that, I hate that term, but whatever phobia or fear might exist, I think will melt away, because then they'll say, oh, wait a minute, we are going to hold them accountable to our values. There are groups like the American Islamic Forum, the Muslim Reform Movement that exist. There are secularists in Turkey that share our value. Green revolutions in Iran, the 10 million that went to the streets in Egypt, those Muslims exist, but because of the last administration's negligence and actually serving the Islamist governments has really clouded the existence of our voices. And I think the more Americans start to hold us accountable to our own values of equality and universal human rights, the more I think much of that fear will go away.
That's great. Thank you so much, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. It's really always a pleasure to have you on. We appreciate your voice in the conversation.